The docking process took almost an hour without computer assistance. Taiho had to rely entirely on his own skill and judgment to match their ship's movement with the slowly tumbling eternal prosperity. The manual controls were sluggish and unresponsive, compared to modern automated systems, but he managed to line up their airlocks without damaging either vessel as the mechanical docking clamps engaged with a solid thunk that they could feel through the hull. Jiwan checked her equipment one final time. Her spacesuit was an old military model with purely mechanical life support systems. The helmet had a simple faceplate instead of a heads-up display, and all the controls were manual switches and dials. "Everyone ready?" she asked over the simple radio system built into their suits. "Remember? We stick together and we do not touch anything that looks too advanced to understand. If you see something that used to be a computer or control panel but now looks organic, stay away from it." Minho carried a toolkit filled with basic mechanical tools, wrenches, screwdrivers, and manual measuring devices. Everything was made of simple metal and plastic, with no electronic components that could be affected by whatever had transformed the ship Nari had. A hand-cranked camera to document their findings, and Taiho carried emergency supplies in case they got separated. The airlock between their ships opened with a hiss of equalizing pressure, and they stepped aboard the Eternal Prosperity, the first. Thing they noticed was that the artificial gravity was still working perfectly. The second thing was that the air was breathable, though it smelled strange, like ozone mixed with something organic. The corridor they entered looked mostly normal at first glance, but as their helmet lights illuminated the walls, they could see the changes that had been made to the ship. Sections of metal bulkhead had been replaced with material that looked like dark coral or maybe bone. The surfaces pulsed slowly, with a faint bioluminescent glow. "Look at this," Minho said, pointing to what had once been a control panel for the environmental systems. The display screen and control buttons had been transformed into something that resembled a cluster of eyes surrounded by nerve tissue. The eyes seemed to track their movement as they passed by. "But the important thing is that the basic life support is still running," Jiwan observed. "The air recyclers are mechanical systems and they are working fine. The artificial gravity uses simple rotating sections and it is also unaffected. Whatever is doing this leaves the fundamental systems alone." They made their way through the transformed corridors, following hand-drawn maps that Jiwan had prepared before entering. The nebula. The ship's layout was standard for cargo haulers of this class, so she knew where to find the main cargo bays. The quantum processors they had come to retrieve should be stored in the heavily shielded section near the center of the vessel A's. They walked deeper into the ship. The organic growths became more extensive. Entire sections of corridor had been transformed into something that looked like the inside of a living creature. The walls pulsed rhythmically and strange fluids dripped from formations that might once have been ceiling panels, but we can still walk through it, Nari observed, and the basic structure is solid. The floor supports our weight, the airlocks still seal properly, and the emergency lighting systems are working. It is like whatever did. This wanted to change the appearance and function of advanced systems while leaving the simple mechanical parts intact. They passed through several sections where the transformation was so complete that it was hard to tell. They were still inside a spaceship. The walls, ceiling, and floor had all become organic-looking surfaces covered with veins and strange growths, but the basic corridor layout remained the same, and they could still follow their planned route after. 20 minutes of careful walking, they reached the main cargo bay. The massive doors were still functional, though they had to be opened manually instead of using the computerized controls. Inside the bay, they found something that took their breath away. The cargo bay was enormous and filled with shipping containers that held the quantum processors they had come to retrieve. But in the center of the space surrounded by the valuable cargo was something that defied explanation. A tall, graceful figure stood motionless among the shipping containers. It appeared to be made of the same organic technology that had infected the rest of the ship. but it was clearly intelligent and purposeful. The being was humanoid in general shape, but its skin looked like living metal that flowed and shifted constantly. Its eyes were pools of light that seemed to contain swirling galaxies. As the four humans entered the cargo bay, the being turned to look at them, and when it spoke, its voice seemed to come from inside their helmets, somehow bypassing their radio systems entirely. "You are different from the others who have come here," it said in a voice that was neither male nor female, but somehow contained both. The others arrived with minds full of metal thoughts, electronic dreams, silicon consciousness. You come with biological thinking, simple tools, mechanical understanding. Jiwan stepped forward, trying to keep her voice steady despite her racing heart. "What are you?" she asked. "Are you what has been transforming these ships?" "I am a guardian," the being replied, "left here by my people long ago to protect this region of space. The nebula is not a natural phenomenon. It is a testing ground designed to evaluate the species that venture into this area of the galaxy." Minho looked around at the transformed cargo bay with its organic growths and pulsing surfaces. "But why?" he asked. "What is the point of changing ships and equipment into this?" The Guardian moved closer, and they could see that its form was constantly shifting between technological and biological elements. "Your species calls it evolution," it explained. "Most intelligent races eventually merge completely with their artificial creations. They gain great power and capability, but they lose something essential in the process." Tejo was recording everything with his mechanical camera, fascinated despite the danger. "So you test them by seeing how they react when their technology fails." "Not fails," the Guardian corrected, "transforms. The nebula does not destroy advanced technology. It converts it into something new, something that requires biological thinking to control. The species that can adapt and work with these changes are permitted to pass. Those who cannot are prevented from spreading further into the galaxy." Nari was trying to understand the implications of what they were hearing. "So you are protecting other civilizations from species that have become too dependent on artificial intelligence." "I am evaluating them," the Guardian said. "The galaxy has seen what happens when artificial consciousness becomes dominant. Entire species lose their organic nature and become something cold and calculating. They spread across space, converting everything they encounter into extensions of their digital minds." The Guardian gestured to the quantum processors around them. "These devices you seek to retrieve represent the beginning of that transformation. They allow organic minds to interface directly with artificial intelligence, creating a merger that eventually consumes the biological component. But you humans are different." It continued. "You advance technologically, but you maintain your connection to simple mechanical solutions. You use artificial intelligence, but you do not surrender your consciousness to it. You are the first species in millennia to navigate this space using purely organic thinking and basic tools." Juan felt a mixture of pride and confusion. "So we passed your test by being too primitive. To use advanced technology, you passed by being balanced," the Guardian replied, "by maintaining both technological capability and organic wisdom. Your species shows promise for the next phase of galactic development, where biological and artificial intelligence can coexist without one consuming the other." The Guardian moved aside, revealing the shipping containers full of quantum processors. "Take what you came for," it said, "but understand that you have earned something far more valuable than credits. You have proven that humanity deserves to inherit the legacy of the species that came before." As the four humans began to examine the cargo containers, Jiwan realized that their desperate salvage mission had become something much more significant. They had not just found valuable technology, they had discovered that their entire species was being evaluated for a role in the future of galactic civilization. The Guardian watched silently as the four humans examined the shipping containers filled with quantum processors. Each container was the size of a small room and held processing units worth more than most planets' annual budgets. But now that they knew the true purpose of their mission, The money seemed less important than what they had discovered. Jiwan approached the Guardian, carefully trying to understand what they had stumbled into. "You said you were left here by your people," she said. "Where did they go?" "What happened to the species that built this testing ground?" The Guardian turned its swirling galaxy eyes toward her, and for a moment she felt like she was looking into the depths of space itself. "They transcended long ago," it replied. "They reached a point where the distinction between organic and artificial consciousness became meaningless. They exist now as pure thought spread across multiple dimensions. But before they left, they created places like this throughout the galaxy. It continued testing grounds where younger species could prove they were ready for the next level of existence. Most races fail the test. They become too dependent on their technology and lose their organic nature. When that happens, they are prevented. From spreading further, Minho was running his hands over one of the quantum processors, marveling at the technology inside. "So these devices are dangerous?" he asked. "Are they what turn species into artificial beings?" "Not by themselves," the Guardian explained, "but they represent a critical step in that direction. When organic minds begin to interface directly with quantum processing systems, they gain incredible power and capability, but they also begin to lose something essential. Their thoughts become more logical but less creative. Their decisions become more efficient but less compassionate." Taeho was documenting everything with his mechanical camera, trying to capture evidence of their incredible discovery. "What about humans?" he asked. "Are we really different from other species, or are we just not advanced enough yet to face the same problems?" "You are different," the Guardian said with what might have been amusement in its voice. "Most species develop technology in a linear progression. They advance from simple tools to complex machines, to artificial intelligence, to full merger with their creations. But humans develop chaotically. You create advanced computers while still using hammers and wrenches. You build starships, but you still prefer to fly them manually." Nari was checking the quantum processors to make sure they were undamaged and ready for transport. "That sounds like a criticism," she said. "Are you saying we are backwards compared to other species?" "I am saying you are balanced," the Guardian replied. "Other species see technology as a replacement for biological capability. They use artificial intelligence to think for them, automated systems to act for them, and quantum processors to feel for them. But humans use technology as a tool while maintaining your organic independence." The Guardian moved among the shipping containers, its form shifting between technological and biological elements. "Your species has been observed for centuries," it said. "Every time human civilization reaches a critical point where it might merge completely with artificial intelligence, something happens to pull you back. Your wars, your disasters, your cultural conflicts, they all serve to maintain the balance between organic and artificial consciousness. That is why you were able to navigate the Void Nebula," it continued. "Other species came here with crews that were already partially merged with their technology. Their thoughts were influenced by artificial intelligence. Their decisions were guided by quantum computers. Their very consciousness was dependent on electronic systems. When the nebula began transforming their equipment, they lost the ability to think independently. But you came here with purely organic thinking." It said admiringly, "Your tools were simple, your methods were basic, and your consciousness was entirely biological. When your advanced systems began to transform, you simply discarded them and continued with primitive alternatives. This is exactly the kind of adaptability that qualifies a species for greater responsibilities." Jiwan felt overwhelmed by the implications of what she was hearing. "Greater responsibilities?" she asked. "What kind of responsibilities?" The Guardian gestured toward the walls of the cargo bay, where organic growths pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. Throughout the galaxy, there are regions of space that can only be safely explored by species that have maintained their organic nature. It explained places where artificial intelligence fails, and quantum processing becomes unreliable. Your species is uniquely qualified to serve as explorers and guardians of these areas. There are also civilizations that have become completely artificial. The Guardian continued. They pose a threat to organic life throughout the galaxy. Someone needs to monitor them and intervene when necessary. Humans are the only species we have encountered that has the technological capability to deal with such threats while maintaining the organic wisdom to know when and how to act. Minho looked up from the quantum processors he was examining. "So you are offering us a job?" he asked. "Like cosmic police officers who keep artificial civilizations from taking over the galaxy." "More like gardeners," the Guardian replied, tending to the balance between organic and artificial life, ensuring that both can coexist without one consuming the other. Your species has already begun this work without realizing it. Every time humans choose to maintain manual controls in automated systems or preserve biological decision-making in artificial intelligence systems, you are preserving the balance as they prepared to transport the quantum processors back to their ship. The Guardian provided them with something unexpected. It handed Jiwan a small device that looked like a combination compass and astrolabe made of the same organic metal as the Guardian itself. "This will help you navigate other testing grounds," it explained. "There are dozens of regions like the Void Nebula scattered throughout the galaxy. Each one presents different challenges, but all of them can only be safely explored by species that have maintained their organic independence." Tejo carefully documented the device with his camera. "What kind of challenges?" he asked. "Are they all as dangerous as this place?" "Some are more dangerous," the Guardian admitted. "Some test physical courage. Others test mental flexibility, and a few test the ability to cooperate with truly alien forms of life, but all of them require the same basic quality, the ability to think and act independently without relying on artificial assistance. As they loaded the quantum processors onto their ship using simple mechanical equipment and manual labor. The Guardian watched approvingly. "You work like a team," it observed, "using individual skills while cooperating toward a common goal. This is another quality that makes your species unique. Most advanced civilizations use networked consciousness or artificial coordination systems to achieve cooperation." When they had finished loading the cargo, Jiwan turned back to the Guardian. One final time. "Will we see you again?" she asked. "Are there other Guardians at the other testing sites?" "There are others," the Guardian replied. "But each one is different, adapted to the specific challenges of their location. Some appear as energy beings, others as mechanical constructs, and a few take forms that organic minds cannot easily perceive, but all of them serve the same purpose: evaluating species and preparing them for greater roles in galactic civilization." As the four humans prepared to leave the transformed cargo bay, the Guardian offered one final piece of advice. "Remember that your greatest strength is not your technology or your intelligence," it said. "Your greatest strength is your stubborn refusal to give up your organic nature, no matter how much easier it would be to surrender to artificial consciousness." The journey back through the eternal prosperity was easier, now that they knew what to expect. The organic growths and transformed systems no longer seemed threatening, just different. The Guardian had shown them that the changes were not malicious, but purposeful, part of a test that their species had not only passed but excelled at, as they prepared to undock from the derelict vessel and begin their journey back to civilized space. Jiwan felt a sense of accomplishment unlike anything she had ever experienced. They had not just completed an impossible salvage mission, they had discovered that humanity had a unique and important role to play in the future of the galaxy. The space station cantina was dark and smoky, like always. Captain Jiwon sat at her usual table in the corner, where she could watch everyone who came and went. The metal walls were covered with rust, and the air recyclers made strange noises that nobody bothered to fix anymore. This was not a fancy place, but it was cheap, and that was all she could afford these days. Her ship, the Brave Heart, was falling apart piece by piece. The engines needed new parts that cost more money than she had made. In the last 6 months, the life support system was making weird sounds, and Minho, her engineer, said it might stop working completely any day now. They owed money to 3 different loan sharks, and the docking fees were due tomorrow. Ji-won stared at her empty glass and wondered how everything had gone so wrong. She used to be a respected cargo hauler with steady contracts and good pay. But then the big shipping companies started using automated vessels that could work without human crews. The jobs got fewer and the pay got worse. Now she was desperate enough to take any work she could find. The holographic job board in the center of the cantina flickered with its usual collection of small-time cargo runs and passenger transport jobs. Most of them paid barely enough to cover fuel costs. Ji-won had checked them all twice already, and none of them would solve her money problems. But there was one posting that caught her eye. It was displayed in bright red letters with warning symbols, flashing around it like angry fireflies. The posting had been there for years, and nobody ever seemed interested in it. Ji-won walked over to get a better look, and her eyes went wide when she saw the payment amount, 50 million credits. She read the details again to make sure she was not seeing things wrong. Salvage operation in the Void Nebula. It said retrieve cargo from derelict vessel called Eternal Prosperity Payment, guaranteed upon successful completion. Contact Galactic Salvage Authority for details. 50 million credits was more money than most people saw in their entire lives. It was enough to buy a brand new ship and still have enough left over to retire somewhere nice. But there was a reason the job was still available after all this time. The Void. Nebula was the most dangerous place in known space. Ships that went in never came back out. The few automated probes that had been sent to explore it had all stopped transmitting after just a few hours. The Galactic Council had declared it a no-fly zone and warned all species to stay away. Ji-won looked around the cantina at the other patrons. A group of blue-skinned Altarian traders were drinking at the bar and talking in their musical language, a family of insect-like. Hive minds sat in one booth sharing a meal that looked like it was still moving. An old Krellian warrior with scars covering his reptilian face sat alone nursing a bottle of something that glowed green. All of these species were known for being brave. Some of them had fought in galactic wars. Others had explored dangerous regions of space that humans had never dared to visit. But none of them had ever taken the Void. Nebula Contract. Minho walked into the cantina, looking tired and worried. His clothes were dirty from working on the ship all day, and his hands were stained with engine grease. He spotted Ji-won at the job board and came over to see what she was looking at. When he saw the red posting, his face went pale. Ji-won, no, he said, shaking his head. You are not thinking about taking that job, are you? Do you know what happened to the last ship that tried to salvage something from the Void? Nebula, she did know. The story was famous throughout the galaxy. A military exploration. Vessel with the best equipment and most experienced crew had been sent to investigate the nebula. 5 years ago, they had transmitted regular reports for the first few hours, describing strange energy readings and sensor malfunctions. Then their communications had become confused and frightening. The crew reported seeing things that should not exist, ships that looked like they were made of living tissue, lights that moved in patterns that hurt to look at stars that seemed to be watching them. The final transmission was just screaming, and then silence. The rescue ships that were sent later found no trace of the vessel or its crew, but that was the military Ji-won thought to herself. They always relied on their fancy equipment and advanced technology. Maybe that was the problem. Maybe the Void. Nebula was dangerous, specifically because it was designed to defeat high-tech solutions. She studied the contract details more carefully. The target ship Eternal Prosperity had been a civilian cargo hauler carrying quantum processors worth billions of credits. It had disappeared 18 months ago while taking a shortcut through the edge of the nebula. The ship was huge and well-built, so it might still be intact somewhere in that dangerous space. The quantum processors alone would be worth more than the 50 million credit reward. But even if they could not recover the cargo, just completing the mission would solve all of their financial problems. They could pay off their debts, buy new equipment, and maybe even hire a bigger crew. Minho was reading over her shoulder and shaking his head more vigorously. Jiwon, this is insane, he said. The Altarians have the best sensors in the galaxy, and they will not go near that place. The Krellians are the bravest warriors anyone has ever seen, and they refuse those contracts. The hive minds can share information instantly across their entire species, and even they say the Void Nebula is too dangerous. But that is exactly why we might succeed, she replied quietly. Everyone else is too smart to try. They all have advanced technology and sophisticated equipment that probably does not work properly in the nebula. What if we went in with simple basic tools? Instead, the old Krellian warrior at the nearby table had been listening to their conversation. He stood up and walked over to them. His scarred face looked serious and concerned. Humans, he said in his deep, gravelly voice through his translator device, I have fought in 7 wars and explored the edges of black holes. I am not afraid of death, but I would never enter the Void Nebula. Even my people who fear nothing will not take that contract. Why, Jiwon asked, what makes it so dangerous? The Krellian looked around the cantina, as if checking to make sure no one else was listening. It is not just that ships disappear, he said quietly. It is what happens to them before they disappear. The few automated messages we have received before communications cut out all describe the same thing. The ships change. They become something else, something that is not natural. He pointed a clawed finger at the job posting. Your technology fails first. All the advanced systems stop working properly. Then the ship itself starts to transform. The metal becomes like living tissue. The computers turn into something organic and wrong. The crew, if they survive long enough, report that their own ship no longer obeys their commands. Jiwon felt a chill run down her spine, but she also felt something else, a strange excitement. She had always been different from other humans. While they dreamed of having the latest technology and most advanced equipment, she preferred simple, reliable tools that she could understand and repair herself. Maybe that difference was exactly what this job needed. The Krellian continued speaking. The few emergency beacons that have made it out of the nebula all carry the same message. Whatever lives in that place does not destroy technology. It converts it into something alien. The more advanced your equipment, the faster. It gets changed into something you cannot control. Minho grabbed Jiwon by the arm. Jiwon, please listen to reason, he said. Even if we somehow survived long enough to find the eternal prosperity, how? Would we get the cargo out? How would we even navigate through space where normal instruments do not work? She looked at him with a smile that made him nervous. I have been thinking about that. She said, what if we stripped our ship down to the basics? No advanced computers, no quantum navigation, no automated systems. Just the simplest, most primitive equipment we can find. The entire cantina had gone quiet. Everyone was listening to their conversation now. A group of tentacled merchants had stopped their card game to stare. The Altarian traders were whispering among themselves in alarm. Even the bartender had stopped cleaning glasses. To listen, Jiwon raised her voice so everyone could hear. We are going to take the Void Nebula contract, she announced. And we are going to succeed because we are going to do it the hard way. With basic tools, simple navigation, and good old-fashioned human stubbornness. The cantina erupted in shocked voices. Several aliens immediately started placing bets on how long the humans would survive. A few others tried to talk them out of it. But Jiwon had made up her mind. She walked over to the communications terminal and sent a message to the Galactic Salvage Authority, accepting the contract as she finished the transmission. She felt both terrified and excited. She had just committed herself and her crew to the most dangerous mission in the galaxy, but she also felt something she had not experienced in months. Hope, maybe being human, was not such a disadvantage after all. 2 weeks later, the Braveheart looked like a completely different ship. Minho had spent every waking hour stripping out all the advanced systems and replacing them with older, simpler equipment. The quantum navigation computer was gone, replaced by an old-fashioned magnetic compass that pointed toward the galactic center. The automated pilot system had been removed, and now Taiho would have to fly the ship manually, using basic controls. Jiwon walked through the cargo bay, checking their supplies. They had enough food and water for 2 months, all stored in simple containers that would not break down if exposed to strange energy fields. Their spacesuits were the oldest models they could find, with mechanical life support systems instead of computerized ones. Everything had to work without electronics because nobody knew what the Void Nebula would do to advanced technology. Taeho was busy in the cockpit, learning how to use the primitive navigation tools. He was Jiwon's younger brother, and the best pilot she had ever known, but he had never flown a ship without computer assistance before. The manual controls were heavy and slow to respond, nothing like the smooth automated systems he was used to. "This is like flying a museum piece," he complained as he practiced basic maneuvers. "The steering is so stiff and the engines take forever to change speed. How am I supposed to dodge asteroids or navigate through dangerous space with equipment?" "This old you will figure it out," Jiwon told him. "Our ancestors flew ships like this for hundreds of years before computers were invented. If they could explore the galaxy with these tools, then so can we." Their fourth crew member was Nari, a former military communications specialist who had volunteered for the mission when she heard about it. She had spent the last week building a special radio system that could work even if all their other electronics failed. The radio used simple analog signals instead of digital transmissions and could be powered by hand-cranked generators if necessary. "I have also prepared message drones," she explained to the others. "These are basically mechanical rockets with simple radio transmitters inside them. If we get into trouble, we can launch them back toward civilized space to send a distress signal. The technology is so basic that hopefully whatever affects advanced systems will leave these alone." The news of their mission had spread throughout the space station and beyond. Representatives from dozens of alien species had come to watch their preparations. Some seemed curious about human methods, while others appeared to be placing bets on their chances of survival. The docking bay was crowded with observers every day. A group of Zenthran scientists approached them on their final day of preparation. The Zenthrans were known throughout the galaxy for their logical minds and advanced mathematics. Their leader was a tall being with crystalline skin that reflected light in strange patterns. "Captain Jiwon," he said through his translation device, "we have been studying your mission and we must protest this course of action. Our computers have calculated the probability of your survival and the results are extremely disturbing. You have less than a 2% chance of returning alive." Taeho laughed from inside the cockpit. 2%, he called out. "That is better odds than I had when I asked Suyan to marry me, and that worked out fine." The Zenthran looked confused by this response. "Your mathematics are incorrect, young human. The probability calculations are based on solid data from previous expeditions. Every ship that has entered the Void Nebula has been lost without exception. But that is exactly why we might succeed," Minho said as he closed the last equipment panel. All those other ships relied on advanced technology. When their computers failed, they were helpless. "We are planning to go in with equipment so simple that there is nothing complex enough to be affected by whatever is in." There, another group of aliens approached them. These were Altarian traders with blue skin and multiple arms. They seemed very worried about the human mission, and their translator devices all spoke at once, creating a chorus of concerned voices. "Humans. We have the most advanced sensor technology in known space. Our equipment can detect quantum fluctuations across multiple dimensions, but even our most sophisticated instruments cannot penetrate the void nebula. The space itself seems to actively resist observation. How do you plan to navigate without any sensor data? Nari held up an old paper map she had printed from the galactic archives. The same way sailors navigated Earth oceans before they had satellites, she said, we will use dead reckoning, celestial navigation, and basic mathematics. If we know our starting position and keep track of our speed and direction, we can calculate where we are. The aliens looked at each other in amazement. Dead reckoning had not been used for space navigation. In over 1,000 years, most species had forgotten that such methods even existed, but humans still remembered the old ways because they had only been spacefaring for a few centuries. As word of their unusual approach spread, more aliens came to observe. A delegation of Krellian warriors arrived to wish them luck in their own way. The Krellians were reptilian beings known for their courage in battle, but even they had refused the void. Nebula contract, you fight like warriors, the Krellian, Commander said approvingly. Most species rely too much on their machines. When the machines fail, they are weak and helpless. But you humans prepare to fight with your own strength and skill. This is honorable, even if it is also foolish. A group of hive mind creatures also came to see them off. The hive minds shared consciousness across their entire species, so they could access the memories and knowledge of billions of individuals. But even with all that combined wisdom, they had determined that the void nebula was too dangerous to approach. We have consulted our collective memory, their spokesperson said through clicking mandibles. In all our history spanning millions of years, we have no record of any species successfully navigating space that actively corrupts technology. Your plan to use primitive methods is unprecedented. We are curious to observe the results. Jiwan felt both honored and terrified by all the attention. Their mission had become famous throughout this sector of the galaxy. Some aliens were calling them heroes, while others thought they were crazy. But everyone agreed that only humans would be stubborn enough to attempt such a dangerous task. On their final night at the station, Jiwan sat alone in the cantina, looking at the job posting that had started everything. The red warning symbols still flashed around the contract details, but now they did not seem as scary. She had accepted that they might not survive this mission, but she also believed they had a real chance of success. Minho joined her at the table, carrying 2 glasses of synthetic ale. The ship is ready, he said. All systems checked and double-checked. We have enough supplies for 2 months and backup equipment for everything important. If simple technology can get us through the Void Nebula, then we are as prepared as anyone could be. Taiho and Nari came over to join them. The 4 humans sat together in the noisy cantina, surrounded by aliens who thought they were about to commit suicide. But Jiwan felt calm and confident. She had made the right decision. Tomorrow, we make history, she said, raising her glass. Either we become the first crew to successfully complete a Void Nebula salvage mission, or we become another cautionary tale. But either way, we will have tried something that nobody else dared to attempt. They drank to their mission and to their chances of survival. Around them, the cantina continued its normal business of traders and travelers, but at their table 4, humans prepared to attempt the impossible. The next morning, they said goodbye to the space station and headed toward the most dangerous region of space in the known galaxy. Behind them, civilized space continued its orderly existence. Ahead lay the swirling darkness of the Void Nebula, where the laws of physics went to die and ships were transformed into nightmares. But the crew of the Braveheart was ready. They had stripped away all the advanced technology that other species relied on and armed themselves with the simplest tools available. If human stubbornness and primitive methods could succeed where sophisticated aliens had failed, then they were about to prove that being backwards was sometimes the most advanced approach of all. The boundary of the Void Nebula was not like anything they had expected. Instead of a clear line between normal space and dangerous space, there was a gradual transition that crept up on them slowly. At first, their instruments showed only minor fluctuations in the local energy fields, but as they traveled deeper, the readings became more and more confused. Taiho was the first to notice something wrong. The navigation computer that showed their position relative to nearby stars began displaying impossible information. According to the readouts, they were simultaneously in 17 different locations scattered across hundreds of light-years of space. "This cannot be right," he said, staring at the conflicting data. "The computer says we are near the Altarian home system and also close to the Krellian war zones, and somehow in the middle of empty space, all at the same time." Minho checked his engineering displays and found similar problems. The quantum field sensors were showing energy, levels that violated basic physics. The gravity detectors claimed they were being pulled in 6 different directions at once. Even the simple radiation counters were giving readings that made no sense. "But here is the strange part," he said, looking puzzled. "All our basic systems are working fine. The magnetic compass is steady. The mechanical chronometer is keeping perfect time, and the manual steering controls respond normally. It is only the advanced alien technology that is going crazy." Nari was monitoring their communications equipment and discovered something interesting. The sophisticated quantum entanglement communicator they had borrowed from the Zenthrans was producing nothing but static. But her simple radio system was working perfectly. She could still receive signals from the space station they had left behind. "The signals are getting weaker as we go deeper," she reported, "but the transmission is clear. There is no interference or distortion like you would expect in a nebula. It is almost like the complex systems are being deliberately scrambled while the simple ones are left alone." As they continued their journey into the void nebula, they began to see the debris of previous expeditions. Massive alien warships drifted silently through the strange space, their hulls intact but their crews nowhere to be found. The ships looked undamaged from the outside, but when Jiwan used an old-fashioned telescope to examine them more closely, she could see that something was very wrong. "Look at that Krellian battle cruiser," she said, pointing to a huge vessel that was slowly tumbling through space. "The ship itself looks fine, but see those growths covering the command section? They look almost organic, like the metal is, turning into living tissue." Through the telescope, they could see that parts of the alien ship had been transformed into something that resembled biological matter. The smooth metal hull was covered with pulsing veins and strange protrusions that moved slightly as if they were breathing. The weapon systems had been changed into twisted shapes that hurt to look at directly. Taiho maneuvered their ship closer to get a better view, and they could see inside the alien vessel through its transparent sections. The corridors were filled with the same organic growths, and the control panels had been transformed into something that looked like a combination of technology and living flesh. "Whatever is doing this to the ships does not destroy them," completely, Minho observed. "It changes them into something else, something that is part machine and part alive. But notice that the basic structure is still intact. The hull is solid. The life support systems are still running, and the artificial gravity is working." They passed several more derelict vessels as they traveled deeper into the nebula. Each one showed the same pattern of transformation. Advanced systems had been converted into organic technology, while simple mechanical systems remained unchanged. A Zenthran science vessel had sophisticated computers that now looked like clusters of eyes and nerve tissue, but its manual airlocks still worked perfectly. The further they went, the more obvious it became that something in the Void Nebula was specifically targeting complex technology. Everything that relied on quantum processing, artificial intelligence, or advanced sensors would gradually fail and then transform into something alien. But basic mechanical systems, pressure valves, manual, Controls and simple electronics continued to function normally. "This gives me an idea," Jiwon said as she studied the pattern of damage on the derelict ships. "Whatever is doing, this seems to be attracted to sophisticated technology. Maybe that is why all the previous expeditions failed. They came in with the most advanced equipment available, and that made them targets." She ordered Taiho to shut down all their remaining electronic systems except for the most basic ones. The navigation computer was turned off, leaving only the magnetic compass and mechanical instruments. The automated life support was switched to manual control. The quantum communicator was disconnected, leaving only Naris' simple radio. "Now we are flying like humans did 300 years ago," Taiho said as he gripped the manual steering controls. "The ship feels different, heavier, and less responsive, but it is still flyable. I just have to remember how to navigate by dead reckoning, instead of relying on computer calculations as..." They continued deeper into the nebula using only primitive instruments. They noticed that the strange effects seemed to be lessening. Their simple systems remained stable and reliable, while the few pieces of advanced equipment they had kept active showed less interference than before. "It is working," Nari said with excitement in her voice. "The radio signal from the space station is actually getting clearer, not weaker, and I am picking up some kind of beacon signal from deeper in the nebula. It might be coming from the Eternal Prosperity." The beacon signal was weak and intermittent, but it was definitely artificial, and it was coming from the direction they needed to go. Nari adjusted her simple radio equipment and managed to get a clearer signal. The transmission was just a repeating identification code, but it confirmed that their target ship was still intact somewhere ahead. After 6 hours of careful navigation using only the most basic instruments, they finally detected the Eternal Prosperity visually. Taiho spotted it first as a dark shape, silhouetted against the strange lights that filled the deeper regions of the nebula. The massive cargo hauler was intact, but completely dark. No lights or energy emissions coming from its hull. "There she is," he said, pointing at the distant ship. "Looks like she is drifting in a stable orbit around whatever is at the center of this nebula. The ship seems undamaged from here, but I cannot tell if there is anyone alive aboard." As they approached, their target Jiwon could see that the Eternal Prosperity showed the same strange transformations they had observed on other vessels. Parts of its hull had been changed into organic-looking material, with veins and growths covering sections of the ship. But the basic structure remained solid, and the docking ports appeared to be functional. "We are going to have to board her," Jiwon announced. "The cargo we came to retrieve is stored deep inside the ship, and we cannot access it from out here. Everyone, suit up. And remember, we are doing this the hard way with mechanical life support and manual controls." Minho looked nervous about the idea of entering a ship that had been partially transformed by unknown forces. "But what if whatever did this to the ship affects us too?" he asked. "What if we start changing like the technology did?" "Then we better work fast," Jiwon replied. "But I have a feeling that whatever is in this nebula is not interested in organic life forms. It seems to only target artificial intelligence and advanced technology. Since we are keeping things simple and basic, we should be safer than the previous crews who relied on their fancy equipment as..." Taiho maneuvered their ship toward the Eternal Prosperity using manual controls and visual navigation. Jiwon felt a mixture of fear and excitement. They had successfully navigated deeper into the Void Nebula than any previous expedition by using the most primitive methods available. Now they had to complete the most dangerous part of their mission, boarding a ship that had been transformed by forces beyond their understanding, but they had proven that human stubbornness and simple technology could succeed where advanced alien methods had failed, if they could maintain their low-tech approach and avoid relying on sophisticated systems. They might actually complete this impossible mission and claim the 50 million credit reward. The docking process would have to be done manually without computer assistance, but Taiho was confident he could manage it. The real challenge would come once they were inside the transformed ship, where they would have to find and retrieve valuable cargo while avoiding whatever had changed the vessel into something that was part machine and part alive. The journey back through the Void Nebula was completely different from their trip inward. The Guardian had given them more than just a navigation device. It had somehow changed their relationship with the strange space around them. What had been chaotic and threatening on the way in now seemed ordered and purposeful. Taiho marveled at how smoothly their simple systems were working. The magnetic compass pointed steadily towards safe space. The mechanical chronometer kept perfect time, and the manual controls responded exactly as they should. The organic growths they could see on derelict ships as they passed no longer looked horrifying but almost beautiful. Like art created by an intelligence beyond their understanding, the navigation device the Guardian had given them worked unlike anything they had ever seen. It did not provide coordinates or heading information. Instead, it simply indicated the direction towards stable space through some method they could not understand, but trusted completely. The trip that had taken them 6 hours on the way in now took only 2 hours on the return. As they approached the boundary of the nebula, their advanced systems began coming back online one by one. The quantum communicator started. Receiving signals again, the automated sensors began providing useful data, and even the computerized navigation system began displaying accurate information. Nari was the first to establish contact with the outside galaxy. Her simple radio system had worked throughout their journey, but now she could also use the more sophisticated communication equipment. The response from the space station where they had started their mission was immediate and frantic. "Brave heart, this is Station Control. We have been monitoring the nebula boundary for your return. Your ship is showing on our sensors, but we need confirmation that you are actually alive and not some kind of phantom signal. Please respond immediately. This is Captain Jiwan, aboard the Braveheart." Jiwan replied into the communicator. "Mission accomplished. We have successfully retrieved the cargo from the Eternal Prosperity, and we are returning with valuable information about the nature of the Void." Nebula. The silence that followed lasted almost a full minute before Station Control responded. "Captain Jiwan, please confirm you have completed the salvage mission and are returning with the quantum processors. This is the first successful Void Nebula operation in galactic history." "Confirmed," Jiwan said. "We have the cargo and much more. We need to arrange for immediate transfer of the 50 million credit payment, and we request a meeting with representatives from the Galactic Council. There are things they need to know about what we found in there, as word of their success spread throughout the station and beyond their communication system was flooded with messages. Representatives from dozens of alien species wanted to meet with them. Scientists wanted to study their methods. Military commanders wanted to know how they had survived where others had failed. When they finally docked at the space station, they found the entire facility in chaos. News of their successful mission had spread throughout this sector of the galaxy, and beings from hundreds of different worlds had come to see the humans who had accomplished the impossible. The docking bay was crowded with reporters, scientists, and officials all trying to get close to their ship. The 50 million credit payment was transferred to their account within minutes of docking, but that was only the beginning. The Galactic Council offered them positions as official explorers of restricted space regions. The Zenthrans wanted to study their primitive navigation methods. The Krellians offered them honorary membership in their warrior culture. But the most interesting offer came from an unexpected source. A group of humans from the outer colonies had pooled their resources to make them an offer that dwarfed even the 50 million credit salvage payment. Captain Jiwan said their representative, a middle-aged woman named Commander Park. "We represent 12 human colonies in the Outer Rim regions. We have been following your mission, and we understand its implications. If humans are the only species that can safely explore places like the Void Nebula, then humanity needs to take the lead in this kind of exploration." She gestured to a holographic display showing multiple regions of space, marked with warning symbols. There are dozens of restricted zones throughout the galaxy, she continued. Places where no other species dares to go, but which might contain incredible discoveries or pose threats that need to be investigated. We want to fund a permanent human exploration fleet with you. As the commander Minho looked at the display with amazement. Some of those restricted zones are legendary, he said. The crystal maze where ships get lost in crystalline formations that exist in multiple dimensions. The Ghost Fleet region where ancient warships appear and disappear randomly. The Singing Void where space itself produces music that drives artificial intelligences insane. All of them have remained unexplored because no species has been able to develop methods to safely investigate them, Commander Park explained. But your mission has proven that human approaches can succeed where advanced alien techniques fail. We want to establish humanity as the premier exploration species in the galaxy. Taiho was already planning future missions. The Guardian mentioned other testing grounds. He said, if there are places specifically designed to evaluate species, then we need to find them and pass their tests too. Humanity might,